Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today, just as I promised in the previous episodes, I bring you the next chapter in the deeply emotional love story of Tusan and Ly Hoai, a story that is not only about romantic love, but also a long journey of returning. Of old wounds being gently healed, of family, of acceptance, and of a complete happiness they had to pay for with many years of quiet endurance. After a long road of love, where every step was filled with trials, where misunderstandings once pushed them apart, where silent losses left spaces that were hard to fill, and where unspoken pain quietly clung to their hearts, the moment they once believed existed only in their dreams finally arrived. The wedding, a wedding awaited for so many years, officially began. It was not a loud or extravagant ceremony, with no flowery vows proclaimed to the world, yet it was deep enough, still enough, and sincere enough to touch the hearts of everyone present in that sacred moment. The church glowed beneath the gentle light of the early morning sun. It was a light that was neither harsh nor blinding, but soft and clear, slipping through the tall stained glass windows and slowly spreading across the vast interior. Shimmering colors reflected on the ancient stone walls, creating a scene that felt sacred, solemn, and unexpectedly warm. Everything seemed to slow down, as if time itself had chosen to move more gently to make room for this special moment. The church bells rang out in steady, resonant tones. The sound was not loud, but it lingered in the air, reaching deep into the hearts of those who heard it. Each chime felt like a reminder, a quiet witness to the journey Tusan and Ly Hoai had walked together, a journey far from smooth, yet long enough for them to learn how to hold each other's hands more tightly after every moment they nearly let go. The bells also felt like a silent blessing, offered to those who had endured enough pain to understand what it means to cherish, to stay, and to never miss each other again. Inside the church, the atmosphere was so still that even the soft rhythm of breathing could be heard. Each row of seats was neatly arranged, each empty space carrying a sense of anticipation. There was no rush, no restless impatience. Everyone seemed to be waiting for something that had arrived late, yet arrived at exactly the right time. That stillness did not feel empty. Instead, it brought a rare sense of peace, the kind that only appears after all storms have passed, when one is calm enough to embrace happiness with clarity and gratitude. The light continued to spread gently, embracing every corner of the church, highlighting the aged beauty of the space and the solemnity of the ceremony. Every detail, from the tall, sturdy stone pillars to the windows marked by time, seemed to help tell a story of resilience and faith. Much like the love of Tusan and Ly Hoai, not loud or showy, but steadfast through the years, tempered by loss, and finally settling into a rare moment of peace. In that space, emotions seemed to flow more slowly, more deeply. No one needed to speak, yet everyone could feel that this wedding was not only the beginning of a shared life, but also a marker for a journey that had finally closed the door on old pain. It was a quiet affirmation that, after everything, they chose to stay, chose to trust, and chose to give each other a complete chance, not through grand promises, but through their presence and the peace of this very moment. The door of the wedding car opened softly, almost without making a sound. The moment unfolded slowly, so gentle that it felt as though the surrounding space itself was holding its breath, yielding to something deeply private. Morning light slipped through the newly opened door, casting a soft glow over the stone steps ahead, illuminating every small detail waiting outside. Tusan stepped down, not hurried, not hesitant. Each of her steps was calm and unhurried, carrying the composure of someone who had lived through too many storms to believe that true happiness needs to be seized in haste. The pure white hem of her dress brushed lightly against the cool stone floor, its movement soft and fluid, much like the path she had walked over the years, filled with hardships and uneven turns, yet never losing its inherent gentleness. The wedding dress she chose was not elaborate or ostentatious. It was simple and elegant, every line carefully restrained, not meant to impress through grandeur, but through refinement and purity. The light white fabric fell naturally, embracing her slender figure, highlighting the quiet beauty of a woman who had once been wounded, who had endured, who had learned to remain silent in the face of her own losses. And now, in this moment, she had learned how to smile at happiness, not cautiously, not doubtfully, but with full and peaceful acceptance. Tusan's face was not heavily made up. Just a gentle touch, enough to accentuate her naturally soft features. In her eyes, there was no longer the confusion of standing at countless crossroads, nor the fear of someone who once believed she might never be chosen. In its place was a quiet, profound sense of peace, the kind that only comes after one has truly passed through pain and no longer needs to run from the past. Beside her stood little Ivy. The child appeared like a small yet warm point of light, dressed in a lovely princess gown, simple but charming. The soft layers of fabric wrapped around her tiny frame, making her look both innocent and radiant. Ivy's small hand held tightly onto her mother's, a grip that was firm and familiar, as though it had long been second nature, a bond that needed no words. Ivy walked in step with Tusan, matching her slow rhythm. She looked up at her mother, her bright eyes reflecting the light, filled with admiration and pride. In that gaze, there was not only a child's excitement at a new and wondrous scene, but also a deep sense of security, the feeling of knowing she was standing beside the most important person in her life. "Mom, you look like a fairy today." The child's voice rang out, innocent and sincere, untouched by any embellishment. The words were soft, yet they made Tusan pause. Her step slowed, then stopped. She bent down to meet her daughter's eyes and gently squeezed the small hand resting in hers. In that moment, Tusan's smile appeared naturally. It was not merely the smile of a bride on her wedding day, nor simply the joy of wearing a white gown. It was the deep emotion of a mother's heart. Within that smile lived tenderness, gratitude, and countless quiet memories that had never been spoken aloud. More than anyone, Tusan understood that the child standing before her was the one who had walked with her through the darkest days of her life. The one who stayed when she was at her weakest, when everything seemed to be falling apart. The one who held her hand through long, silent nights, through moments when she questioned whether she was strong enough to continue. And it was also this very child who gave her the reason to rise, to not give up, to believe that happiness, even when it arrives late, is still worth waiting for. Tusan said nothing more. She simply looked at Ivy and held her hand a little tighter, a silent reply. In that moment, amid the stillness and the gentle light, mother and daughter stood side by side, carrying all they had been through and all that lay ahead, bound together by an invisible thread stronger than any promise could ever be. In the front rows, Hung quietly rose to his feet. Not because of any formal cue, nor because someone signaled him to do so. It was a completely natural reaction, born deep within him, the instant his eyes caught sight of Tusan standing at the entrance, dressed in a pure white wedding gown, calm and steady in a way she had never been before. In that moment, he simply could not remain seated. As Tusan's older brother, Hung looked at her with an expression that blended deep emotion and quiet relief. In that gaze were countless things that needed no words. For years, he had been the one who witnessed her pain most clearly, the nights she cried in silence, believing no one truly understood her, The mornings she forced herself up with a familiar smile to hide her exhaustion. And the times she had to make herself stronger than anyone else, simply to protect her child and safeguard her own fragile life. Hùng had seen Tusan utterly drained, had watched her hesitate before choices that were too harsh to bear. Yet he was also the one who saw, more clearly than anyone, how she never allowed herself to fall. She never complained, never asked for pity. She just kept moving forward in silence, carrying the responsibility of a mother and the dignity of a woman who had been hurt too deeply to permit herself another moment of weakness. And because of that, this moment was not merely a wedding to Hùng. It was a quiet affirmation that those years, painful and unforgiving as they were, had finally led his sister to a place of safety. A place where she no longer had to brace herself. A place where she was allowed to trust, allowed to lean on someone, and allowed to be fully happy. Beside him, Hoai Ca, the woman he was about to marry, gently reached for his hand. The grip was light and restrained, yet it carried a silent comfort. Hoai Ca said nothing, only offered a soft smile, as if she understood everything surging within the man standing next to her. In her eyes was deep empathy, the understanding of a woman who had endured her own trials, and a sincere joy at seeing the sister of the man she loved finally find a peaceful harbor. That smile was not radiant or showy. It was the quiet smile of shared understanding when another person's happiness becomes your own. Hoai Ca knew that to reach this day, Tusan had paid a heavy price. And so this joy was not only the joy of a bride stepping into her wedding, but also a well-earned reward for a long journey of patience and resilience. In another corner of the church, the adoptive mother of Hùng and Tusan sat quietly. She did not stand, nor did she try to hide her emotions. She simply sat there, hands resting gently on her lap, her eyes never leaving the sight of Tusan in her white gown. That gaze carried a lifetime of love, years of hardship, and worries that had never once been spoken aloud. Her eyes were rimmed with red, glistening with tears about to fall. But unlike the tears of worry she once shed, these were tears of happiness. Her lips trembled slightly, as if she were holding herself back from crying out loud. In that moment, words became unnecessary. She did not need to say she was proud, nor did she need to say she was finally at peace. Everything was already visible in the way her eyes followed every step her daughter took. Perhaps, in that sacred moment, she no longer saw the years of hardship behind them. No more sleepless nights fearing her child would suffer unfairly. No more anxieties about an uncertain future. In her heart now was only the image of the little girl she once held close for warmth, who had clung tightly to her hand through difficult days, now grown, standing firm, and finally being loved in the way she truly deserved. Within the stillness of the church, beneath the gentle light and the lingering echo of bells, each person present carried their own emotions. Yet they all shared one thing, a profound, wordless emotion as they witnessed a long journey come to an end, giving way to a gentler beginning, quiet, unadorned, but deep enough to linger for a very long time in the hearts of all who were there. At the end of the aisle, CEO Hoai stood waiting. He had been there from very early on, in the quiet space that slowly settled after the echo of the bells faded away. His black suit was impeccably tailored, every line neat and composed, reflecting the familiar image of a man who had always been in control of his emotions and situations. His posture was straight and steady, showing no sign of nervousness or haste. Yet, if one looked closely into his eyes, it was clear that everything inside him was stirring intensely. Hoai's gaze never left the aisle where Tusan appeared. It was no longer the look of a successful businessman, nor that of a CEO accustomed to cold, rational decisions. It was a gaze filled with emotion, gratitude, cherishing, and a deep understanding for the woman who had walked beside him through the darkest days without a single word of resentment. In those eyes lived unspoken memories, moments he once thought were lost forever, and a quiet ache born from realizing that happiness sometimes arrives very late, yet remains worth waiting for. As Tusan drew closer, Hai remained still, but his breathing slowed. He looked at her as if trying to memorize every detail, from the white hem of her dress gliding softly forward, to her calm face and shimmering eyes. There was no sense of being overwhelmed, no trace of possessiveness. Only a presence filled with respect, the kind he had learned through loving someone who had endured far too much pain. Then Hai's gaze met Ivy. The little girl stood beside her mother, still holding Tusan's hand, her small face glowing beneath the church's gentle light. When Ivy saw him, she smiled and gave a tiny wave, an innocent yet deeply familiar gesture. That smile softened Hai's eyes instantly. The tension vanished. The distance disappeared. What remained was a strange, warm feeling, the realization of a man who suddenly understood that he had already become part of a family without ever noticing, not through grand declarations, but through the smallest, most ordinary moments. When the mother and daughter came closer, Hai did not hesitate. He bent down and lifted Ivy into his arms naturally, effortlessly, as if it were something he had done for years. There was no awkwardness, no stiffness of someone standing before a solemn ritual. Ivy leaned lightly against him, her arms wrapping around his neck, an unconscious gesture, yet one full of trust. The moment passed quickly, but it was enough for everyone present to feel a bond that had been forming for a long time, needing no confirmation. Then Hai turned to Tusan and extended his hand toward her. His palm opened slowly, no rush, no insistence, just a quiet wait. When Tusan placed her hand in his, the moment their hands met, warmth spread through them, trembling yet steady. The grip was not tight, but it was firm enough to carry an unspoken promise. Soft applause rippled through the church, mingled with stifled sobs. The air grew dense with emotion, as everyone understood that this was not merely a ceremonial moment, but the closing of loneliness and the opening of a true home. Before the altar, the priest spoke solemnly, slowly, and clearly, each word resonating in the stillness. "Do you promise to love and protect this woman and her daughter for the rest of your life?" The question was brief yet heavy. Hai listened without answering immediately. He looked at Tusan first, her eyes glistening with tears, yet calm and trusting. Then he looked at Ivy, the little girl resting against him, her wide eyes filled not with fear, but with innocent anticipation. In that instant, all the noise within him seemed to fall silent. There was no hesitation, no weighing of gain and loss. Only one choice. "I promise. I will protect both of them for the rest of my life." Hai's voice was low and steady, not raised, not emphasized. Yet every word was clear and resolute, like a commitment prepared long ago, not for this single day, but for all the days to come. Tusan could not hold back her tears. They streamed down her face, not out of weakness, but because for the first time, she was in a moment where she no longer had to brace herself. Ivy wrapped her arms tighter around his neck, resting her cheek against his shoulder, then whispered softly, quiet, yet audible to those nearby. "I will too. I want to be your daughter." The simple words broke many hearts. Hung lowered his head, exhaling softly as if releasing a burden he had carried for years. Hai Ca wiped her tears, her smile trembling with emotion. Tusan's mother burst into tears, no longer holding back. No one said anything else, but everyone understood, from this moment on, Tusan would no longer walk her journey alone. When the priest smiled and said, "You may kiss the bride." The entire church fell silent in anticipation. Hai leaned down, but he did not kiss Tusan on the lips. Instead, he placed a gentle kiss on her forehead, a slow, reverent kiss, more a promise of protection than an expression of passion. Then he bent down once more and kissed Ivy's forehead as well, tender and sure. "I love you both." The words were not spoken loudly, yet they lingered in the church for a long time, like a peaceful affirmation of a family newly formed, not by formality, but by a choice made from the deepest part of the heart. After the ceremony, everyone gradually gathered together in the small courtyard behind the church. The atmosphere had softened, losing its earlier solemnity and giving way to a warm, everyday intimacy. Laughter drifted through the air, mingling with heartfelt congratulations, nothing loud or showy, yet enough for anyone present to feel the bond among those who had witnessed a long journey arrive at a gentle ending. Hung stepped forward and embraced his sister. His hug was neither tight nor hurried, just the steady, familiar embrace of an older brother who had always stood behind her, quietly protecting her. He didn't say much. Leaning in, he spoke softly, as if meant only for the two of them to hear. "You deserve this happiness." The brief words carried all the years of worry, all the helplessness he had felt when he couldn't bear her pain in her place. In that moment, Hung didn't need to say anything more. He knew, and Tusan knew, that her journey had finally entered a new chapter, one that was safer and more complete. Hoai Ca stood nearby, smiling gently. She took Tusan's hand, the grip light yet firm, like an unspoken blessing. In Hoai Ca's eyes was a sincere hope that from this day forward, Tusan would truly find peace, that she would no longer have to shoulder everything alone, no longer walk through long nights filled only with silence and worry. The two women looked at each other, exchanging few words, yet understanding each other completely in that moment. Tusan's mother stood a little farther back, quietly watching her daughter surrounded by family. She didn't step closer, nor did she join the flow of congratulations. She simply stood there, her eyes glowing with a sense of reassurance she had never known before. In that instant, all the worries she had carried for so many years seemed to melt away. No more fear that her daughter would be alone. No more anxiety about an uncertain future. Before her now was the image of a child who was loved, protected, and fully chosen. For a mother, there was nothing more she could ask for. As the small gathering came to an end, people slowly took their leave, lingering just a little, reluctant to disturb the peaceful atmosphere. Tusan and Hai left the church as the afternoon light began to fade, carrying with them a lightness that felt like finally setting down a burden they had borne for many years. There was no noise of all-night celebration, only the gentle silence of two people who had chosen to stay together after everything. Their wedding night unfolded beneath the soft glow of candlelight. Warm golden light filled the room, creating a private space that felt calm, safe, and intimate. There was no frenzy, no rush, no impulsive emotions, only slowness, understanding, and trust. Tusan rested her head against Hai's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of the man so close beside her. His heartbeat was calm and unwavering, just like the way he had entered her life, never promising grand things, but always being there when it mattered most. In his arms, Tusan felt clearly that this was more than just a night marking the union of two people in love. It was the moment she was finally allowed to relax completely, to let her guard down, to stop worrying that she would have to face tomorrow alone. Hai had chosen to love both her and her child, without conditions, without hesitation. And that choice brought her a sense of safety she had searched for so many years. They didn't speak much that night. There was no need for vows, no need to reaffirm what had already been proven through actions. Their presence together was answer enough. In that quiet, They understood that their relationship was not built on fleeting romance, but on patience, understanding, and the choice to stay after pain. They didn't just become husband and wife. They became a real family, one defined by responsibility, by sharing, and by things that no longer needed to be spoken aloud. But life is never made of peace alone. Even as this moment overflowed with warmth, somewhere in the days ahead, unspoken truths were quietly waiting for their time to surface. Just a few days later, a great secret would begin to reveal itself, one powerful enough to test everything they had just built with trust, forgiveness, and the choice to love. The story is not over yet. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Cái tóc mái của mình hôm qua mình vuốt nó lên, xong rồi hôm nay mình để nó xuống nó cứ cong lên. Đây thì mình đang làm video nhé mọi người. Mình thì mới đang làm phần nội dung, chưa có được cái gì hết trơn. Bây giờ thì mình đang xuất âm thanh. Chắc là
Hello everyone, welcome back to...
nó hơi nhanh, mình sẽ cho chậm lại nha. Cảm ơn mọi người rất nhiều. Hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong những video tiếp theo. Bye bye.